Earth, fire, air, water. Only the Avatar can master all 4 elements and bring balance to the world.
Avatar: The Last Airbender has gone down in history as quite possibly being one of the most involving, influential and important animated shows of all time. What started out as the story of a boy trapped in an iceberg has developed into an entire fictional world, spanning various series and ages. Now the world of the Avatar has grown, but now that the 10-year journey is coming to an end, it's only in the last few seasons we've started to become aware of the grand theme of the series: balance. It's been there since the beginning, and it's more than important now. Now the word balance is said often, but what does it actually mean? Well, let's explore that. The Last Airbender, whilst always remaining fun, bravely managed depicting the genocide, imperialism, and the idea of whether it is right to kill, even for the most just cause. Pretty heavy stuff for a kids show. Now the sequel, The Legend of Korra, went over and beyond, creating a new series with a new target audience. A series surprisingly extroverted with its bold socio-political commentary. By reframing the central power of bending, The Legend of Korra delves into contemporary themes, like the luck-based distribution of advantages and socio-economic justice. In the Avatar universe, certain people are blessed with magical powers, allowing them to manipulate the classical elements. This is considered a martial art called bending. Throughout all of time, a spirit known as the Avatar has the ability to bend all 4 of these elements, and is reincarnated in new human forms every era. This guardian acts as the planet's peacekeeper and representative tie to the spirit world. After the events of Avatar: The Last Airbender, Avatar Aang establishes Republic City, a utopian vision of creating a place where all can live in harmony, and it's an extremely naive creation. Now the Avatar world starts, biographically anyway, with the story of Avatar 1. An Aladdin-style thief who stole the power of firebending and eventually found himself involved with the spirit world, becoming eventually the first Avatar. Avatar 1 showed us that if anything, there is a root to all evil. And the world that the Avatar does live in is unbalanced, it's morally unaligned, spiritually disconnected. Now this conflict causes issues. It pushes spirits and humans apart, causes humans to wipe out entire civilizations. The world falls into a state of unbalance. Now we have the latest Avatar, Korra of the Water Tribe, and the thing is, in her age, the definition of the word balance is now being put into question entirely. Throughout 4 seasons of trying to become a fully fledged Avatar, she has come to grips with what that title really entails, in a way that no other person has before. Korra discovers that this inequality in the world she lives in gives birth to monsters in society and new radical people with radical ideals. Now, The Legend of Korra is much less cartoony and fun than its predecessor The Last Airbender in both tone and message. Whilst Aang lived in a more desperate, war-torn era, his villains were more black and white. And being that slight bit younger, the show had a bit more comedy and fun and didn't really need to go into the psychological state of any of its villains. Because they were so black and white, Aang never really had to come to terms with the problems of leadership, the morally grey, or different visions of peace and order, because he was too busy creating peace and order. Whereas Korra alternatively faces problems more grounded in reality, the problems that can come from peacetime. And then also the fact that not everybody has the same idea of peace. The villains Korra faces blur the lines of good and evil and create a very different type of moral threat to not only the Avatar, but world order, and one that no person has had to face before. We're going to go through the big 4, but all 4 main villains embody something different, a different ideology. Amon symbolises communism, Unalaq is the man behind theocracy, Zaheer has strong ties with anarchy, and Kuvira can be closely aligned with fascism. And if you want to go even deeper, villains like Varric and the Earth Queen can be put behind capitalism and monarchy. We will come back to these because the villains are how the showrunners actually introduce new concepts to Korra, and so they're obviously a very integral part of the series. The thing is, sometimes they're not even all that obvious, for sometimes villain Varric embodies the sheer power of capitalism and the influence that comes with money, while some other villains hide themselves within government, showing that even the Sacred Council of Republic City that the Avatar Aang himself put in place has been breached. And that happens pretty early on too. The Legend of Korra's antagonists have all seen themselves as addressing the powers of a broken world, problems that, they posit, the established elite ignore. Each, though, however good-hearted, veered to violence and extremism, and so Korra naturally put them away with brute force, because she's just doing what she's been taught the Avatar has to do: fight crime and save the day. But the initial assertion they all agreed upon, that this is a broken world in need of fixing, remains unaddressed. The good guys have kept the bad at bay, sure, but they have offered nothing in their place, no big solution. A huge part of Book 1 was being dazzled by Republic City, by its multi-ethnic populace, its technological achievements, its council politics. Which, in comparison to The Last Airbender, is very impressive. But in exploring the world beyond it over the course of the past 2 seasons, Korra has revealed that this progress has not extended to the rest of the world. Busting safe the totalitarian nightmare it's always been, the rural Earth Kingdom is the ungovernable mess of looting and bandits. And the air nomads, however earnest, don't really have an effect on anything. The world is still in need of saving. And now to explore the villains and what they represent in more detail. The first force Korra encounters in Republic City is the revolutionary Amon, the leader of the Equalists, who fight for social equality between those who have the ability to bend the elements and those born without. At first, Amon seems to embody an actual issue in this fictional society, and in Republic City, bending does grant greater social power than those who don't have it. Bending is an integral part of society's foundation. The police force use male bending to enforce the law, criminal gangs push around and steal from civilians, the city's major source of entertainment is the sport of pro-bending, and every single council member is a respected master in the art of it. Due to this total lack of non-bender representation in pretty much every aspect of the city, non-benders are disempowered and have no say in their city-state decisions at all. This explains the amount of opposition benders face in Book 1, creating figures like Sato. Sato is a rare example of a non-bender becoming an influential, successful member of society, and he still uses this success and fury to exact revenge and fund Amon's resistance, creating yet another villain in society. Despite his just cause though, Amon is flawed in his drive due to using violent acts of terrorism and taking people's bending by force rather than become an actual respectable member of society. This devastating ability to permanently rid someone of their bending is in theory rape, ridding them of their personal identity and social power. And this is made even more ironic by the fact that Amon uses the same exact technique that Aang used on the Fire Lord to end the 100-Year War. This technique brings about peace. How was peace achieved? By ridding someone of their power. Yet whilst Amon is clearly not out for power or strength, his cause is made even more invalid by the pure hypocrisy of all of it. His entire cause is led by the sheer fact that not only is he a bender himself, but actually one of the most privileged and powerful ones of them all. His entire backstory was a lie and a cover-up, and whilst there was a legitimate cause here, it got lost in the terror of the attack. Amon was flawed. Then we have Unalaq, Korra's uncle and spirit representative, to put it nicely. Unalaq is perhaps the most warped classic villain archetype that we encounter in the series, but even he has his own version of balance. His balance lies within the spirit worlds, and he saw the Avatar cycle as purely wrong. But he was ultimately a megalomaniac, using his own children, lying his way into authority, happily willing to execute his brother, and was imprisoned for a very good reason, because he tried to murder a toddler, his own niece Avatar Korra. His goal is power, and to rule over an era of darkness by ending Korra's rule and replacing her ancestry with himself as a dark Avatar. Doesn't exactly, I'm not sympathising for you, buddy. Now, he doesn't see Avatar as a guardian role, but more as taking up the helm of a god. He sees himself as a god. Unalaq is not a god. Unalaq can easily be viewed as a generic villain, whose only goal is villainy for the sake of it, but to me, Unalaq, there's more. He's the embodiment of religious zealotry to me. It's a true fact that some twisted souls with dark interests just do exist in this world and the next, and Unalaq finds himself much more invested in the spirit world than humanity, hence why the idea of the Avatar repulses him so much. From his perspective, the human world is disconnected from spirits, and this is a huge problem with the entire world, not even society. And whilst the rest of the world is ignorant of the spirits, he isn't, so of course he sees himself as suitable for the role of Avatar. Regardless, Unalaq was flawed. Then we have Zaheer and Anarchy, the Red Lotus of the next villains of Book 3, a book suitably named Book of Change. Zaheer and his band of criminals saw themselves as peacekeepers, peace through anarchy, and were about to force the world into violent revolution by killing every world leader and resetting the power balance between civilians and kings.
I think you had enough of leaders telling you what to do.
Freedom is just as essential as air, and without it, there is no life.
The Earth Queen's reign has come to an abrupt and violent end.
I deliver Ba Sing Se back into the hands of the people.
Whilst the word anarchy is well suited, and also specifically used by Zaheer himself, another alternative is that he is not fighting for anarchy for the sake of it, but for freedom. Zaheer is the most extreme of the Air Nation, a man who studied the Air Monk's work and took the solidarity and hardships of the clan to the extreme. Yet despite this, he has been proven to quite literally be an airbending master who has found true enlightenment. And this freedom is iterated in his ability to become quite literally weightless and take flight, a feat which is almost impossible even by airbenders. How can a mass terrorist achieve enlightenment?
Have you ever read the poetry of the great airbending guru Lahima? Lahima once wrote, "Instinct is a lie, told by a fearful body, hoping to be wrong."
What's that supposed to mean?
It means that when you base your expectations only on what you see, you blind yourself to the possibilities of a new reality.
Is this just the ramblings of a madman, or is he a true prophet following the true way of peace of the air nomads? Perhaps the way of the true nomads was anarchy, we don't know. Perhaps this breakdown of societal roles was exactly what the monks of solitude found through their lives of meditation was the road to peace. It is totally possible that Zaheer was entirely in the right, but then we also have to think about us. How far do these ideologies stretch? Now okay, as you can see, the line of villain and good and bad is starting to become more blurred already. But there is a huge but. Zaheer's logic of freedom is fundamentally flawed. Anarchy raises some points, and clearly monarchy affects the world of Avatar very, very negatively. But his concept of freedom simply would not translate into real-life application. I think what Zaheer and the Red Lotus in general represents is the innate human desire for freedom. We can't describe it, but we know it's there. We may have all been born in some form of regulated society, but without the option to seek a life for ourselves, it wouldn't be considered a society in which freedom is even permitted. What the Red Lotus wants is to abolish any chance that this freedom is brought under scrutiny, and bring society to its base form of loose and disorderly, reversed to a state of animal-like instinct. But really just think about that. It's literally human nature, most animals' nature too, for us to come under some higher power or a leader. Packs, family groups, hunters, bandits, even if it's not under something as big as a queen or a president, how could Zaheer's world ever exist? It should just be us living in smaller groups, but still with hierarchy? Any form of establishment can become corrupt, it's literally human nature. For that reason, you're interesting, Zaheer, but you're an extremist. Zaheer was flawed. And then we have the final villain, Kuvira, the face of fascism. Now we're still learning about Kuvira and what her endgame is. She is attempting to unite the Earth Nation and, yes, fix it piece by piece, but also inadvertently shutting out all other nations. Which, as we know, whilst a segregated nation can still operate, this world lives off of balance. You can't have a balanced world with just 3 of the 4 elements without every nation. And yet, this is peace by force. She's using an actual colonization technique used by real-life nations, which might make Kuvira the most realistic and maybe even non-villainous antagonist introduced so far. Now, Kuvira is harsh and she's unforgiving, sometimes even bullying smaller towns into joining her ranks, but she seems to be a necessary evil. Even Avatar Aang himself was flawed. At the end of his life, he lived in a progressive world where technology, ethics, and the people themselves are constantly evolving, and so Aang's old vision of peace that worked with villains like Ozai and Zuko is now outdated. And that's the thing. Now that previous avatars fought to make a future in peacetime, it's only now that humanity is trying to figure out what peace even is. Currently we have the Air Nomads, the Red Lotus, the Avatar, and Kuvira all trying to establish balance, whatever that actually does entail. I genuinely would not be surprised if the show ends with Korra ultimately ending the Avatar cycle once and for all. That's a big statement, and I'm going to come back to that. Considering the strong ties to monarchy in both series and the themes that the showrunners are carrying with their villains, it's fair to assume that the entire world, the entire story of Avatar, is based around the notion of leadership, peace, and ultimately, balance. But what is balance? Ever since book 1, this has been Korra's struggle, her main drive as a character, even if she didn't know it at the time. Now, a very obvious and sometimes aggravating fact of the legend of Korra is that a lot of the time, she simply does not listen. Early immaturity caused her retort to the Equalist cause with, bending is the most awesome thing ever. And while she means well, she's never really addressed this issue for actual non-benders living in the city. Korra never tried to understand Vaatu and immediately sided with what she's comfortable with, rather. And while she tried to understand and listen to the Red Lotus plans, her best solution was to instead just beat all of them up. An important line comes in book 4. The names change, but the streets stay the same. You see, Korra defeats her opponents who threaten her way of life, but never gets to the root of a problem or really understands their perspective. In this manner, the Avatar now serves a different role. Not a guardian of the world, but only a guardian of this current vision of peace, and to defend it at any cost, violently if needed. Korra's role is to preserve Aang's naive sanctuary of Republic City. And it just doesn't apply anymore.
Your former enemies. You ever consider maybe you could learn something from them?
Sounds like the swamp's messing with your mind too.
My mind is just fine, thank you. Listen. What did Amon want? Equality for all. Unalaq? He brought back the spirits. And Zaheer believed in freedom.
I guess.
The problem was, those guys were totally out of balance.
Korra lives in a time where the Avatar is praised as a founding father and a hero. Having to live up to that legacy alone is more than enough to create an inferiority complex. But there's a lot more to it than that. The very presence of an Avatar has been extremely romanticized from Korra's perspective. She's been kept hidden away her whole life, taught how to be an Avatar, how to be like Aang. And so yeah, when she gets out, presumably she can't wait to put those good old firebending classes to the test and punch the bad guys, right? Right, because that's ironically exactly what she does when she arrives. From this, it's clear to see that even from the start, Korra's blindsided as to what the Avatar actually entails because of Aang's legacy. Skip ahead a couple books. In book 4, we see Korra as a nomad, an emotional wreck after the events of book 3, literally being paralysed and distraught by the Red Lotus and everything that came before them. This is because Korra has to face something that no other person or Avatar has really had to face before, especially Aang. Opponents who not only want to kill her, but ones that actively try to destroy her way of life. Amon took away her bending and vowed to destroy her. Unalaq took her family hostage, stole her avatar state, and disconnected her from her past lives. And the Red Lotus tried to personally end the avatar cycle for good. They've all posed against what the avatar represents. By the time of book 4, there is little left that this girl can take. The Red Lotus planted a metallic poison, but the real poison was planting the thought inside her head, the fact that she may not be needed any longer. Now this connects with a huge, ambiguous scene from the finale of Book 3. In the aftermath of the Red Lotus battle, Korra attends Jinoro's tattoo ceremony, where it's actually her own mentor Tenzin's words who hit her the hardest.
Avatar Korra, I vow that we will do everything in our power to follow in your footsteps and bring harmony to the world.
Now why does she cry here? What does that tear symbolise? Well, think about it from her perspective. Korra's entire life has revolved around her identity as the Avatar. Hidden away as a toddler, taught how to be a good Avatar for her whole childhood. Hidden away from the world, and now here she is, told her identity means nothing. And Korra is scared that there's nothing else there. So this tear symbolizes impotence and helplessness that she feels from the chair. It's this moment that she realizes the truth of Zaheer's words and her worst fears are confirmed. The world no longer needs the Avatar. I genuinely believe the build up till now has been the beginning for the end of the Avatar cycle. And I think that Korra will end their cycle of the Avatar for good, and that is how she will actually achieve peace.